Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the CHEK blog. I'm here with Jator Pierre, who is today representing the least understood and least popular superhero in all of DC, Aquaman. That's right. Somehow managed to finagle his own movie coming up. I don't know how that is. But
Jason
I'm
MoMA.
well.
Jason
That's probably
MoMA.
right. But I appreciate the fact that you've got Aquaman on today because he does. Aquaman needs love.
I agree, and I really love color, so I really love the color of this shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting for me, what Aquaman kind of represents for me is, well, water is soothing and cooling.
Mm.
So my experience of a lot of what I do for a living is helping others find how to soothe and cool themselves, whether that's from an inflammatory state or that's from a mental and emotional state. How do we bring in soothing and cooling, which for me is a metaphor for empathy and compassion for ourselves?
Mm. Somehow I don't think that's going to be the topic of the movie, though.
And Aquaman's just a badass if you really look into him.
They've been trying to make him for years, but all of that aside, because we got something real to talk about today. And in the last video, I said we were going to talk about the C word, and we are. It's just I'm pretty sure it's not the C. Well, I guess it's not even really a single word, so that was cheating. But it's not the C phrase that anybody was expecting, right? So today you're going to talk to us about cognitive dietary restraint, and maybe something about sleep too.
Yeah.
And of course, how all of those tie into our overarching topic, which is body fat and losing body fat.
Yeah.
Mm.
So kind of back to our original video around palatability and seductive nature of food, and this one of the reasons why eating a palatable diet, not a seductive diet, can be so helpful from a body fat loss perspective is because what happens is most people will spontaneously eat less calories. So less calories coming in. And of course, I want to be really clear, in the past videos we've talked about quality does matter. So quality definitely matters. We're just not diving into the quality aspects in terms of nutrition in this video. So outside of that, the spontaneous piece being probably the most powerful word there. When you look at that from a research perspective, the spontaneity of calorie restriction doesn't come with the same internal stress response that cognitive dietary restraint comes with. So what does cognitive dietary restraint mean? It means when we purposefully and consciously cut calories and or stress about the amount of calories coming into the system and go to lengths to make sure we're cutting those out. That stress, again, this topic seems to be really HPA axis driven. That HPA axis dysregulation, that stress response, again, can be enough to throw the system out of balance, which then will inhibit your body's ability to lose body fat. So the more that you're stressing over your food, the more that you're stressing over how much is coming in and how much you're doing, actually can be very inhibitory to your ability to lose body fat. And that goes back then to, that's why we're inviting this eating a more palatable diet that doesn't invite or elicit the reward responses in the brain so that you overeat. So that's where the cognitive dietary restraint comes in. And then that stress response, then we can tie that into sleep as well, is that, well, most of us have had the experience of stress dysregulating our body's ability to sleep. Think about the last time that you went to bed in a stressful state. Your sleep was probably not that deep or beneficial, or you had a very hard time getting to sleep, or you woke up in the middle of the night sweating and having some type of stress response. So what's interesting about sleep, and how that's also another subtle idea around the lack of ability to lose body fat, is that when you look at sleep from an ancestral lens, we essentially used to rise and fall with the sun in some sense, at least close to it. And as modern society and the Industrial Revolution have taken over, we've gotten further and further and further away from something that's extremely important to human function and recovery, which is our sleep cycles and our circadian rhythm. And essentially, what's missed in my experience around sleep is that people don't really take into consideration that with artificial lighting, back to the sleep video that we also did a while back, that we're living in this perpetual summertime. And it's fascinating when you consider, what does that mean? We're living in a perpetual summertime. What did our bodies need to prepare for in summer from an ancestral perspective? Well, our bodies needed to prepare for winter. So in summertime, there was an abundance of calories. There was an abundance of animals, abundance of fruit and vegetable, depending on where you lived on the earth. And because of that abundance and because of that need to get energy to survive, for our species to survive, we would essentially overeat during the summer. We would essentially overconsume to put on body fat so that we would have the stored energy to make it through the wintertime. Because in the wintertime, everything was essentially lacking. It was harder to find. So by putting ourselves in an environment now, in our kind of contemporary environment, and living under all these artificial lights, without doing things like wearing blue blockers and just get flux, etc., you're essentially telling your body that it's summertime. You're telling your body and sending the signals to it to say, you should overeat from a brain perspective. And then we have this overabundance of acellular carbohydrate available to us, so processed carbohydrates. So we crave those sweets, we overeat this processed acellular carbohydrate, we put on tons of body fat, etc., because our body's trying to prepare for a winter that never comes. So you look at how then, well, sleep has a big effect when you look at the research in terms of driving of hunger, in terms of driving of looking for rewarding foods to overeat, to get more energy in, to prepare more body fat so we can make it through the winter that's not coming anymore. The other thing that's really interesting about sleep is that one night of sleep has been also shown, a lack of sleep, so 5 hours or less, which is almost average now. I think we're at about 6 hours in the United States, has been shown to cause insulin resistance in the body the next day, potentially leading toward a diabetic state. You have an impairment of your ability to tolerate carbohydrate, or what you can process from carbohydrate actually reduces. And interestingly enough, from some of the research from Stephen Guyenet, lacking in sleep actually fires up the brain's starvation response system. It fires it up the same way if someone was cutting a tremendous amount of calories out of their diet, long term. So then your brain's actually in a starvation response. Different hormones start to become out of balance to, one, reduce your need to move and increase your need to ingest. And that's happening at a hormonal level. So you have this lack of sleep, over-craving of rewarding foods, and then if you tie that into somebody who's trying to lose body fat, they're lacking sleep, they're also doing cognitive dietary restraint, adding more stress to that picture. And then they're also working out or overworking out. That is a triad of disaster.
Aquaman and a triad of disaster.
That's a great comic book heading.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, gosh, and in some ways, unwinding those problems can be, the especially the latter one, the sleep one, which in some ways is super easy, right? You just go to bed at 10 and you wake up at 6, and it sounds like it would be super easy, right? But there's all these sort of lifestyle issues to build into that. I mean, I know a number of people who are working jobs that don't make them particularly happy, right? And so when they get home, they feel like they need time for themselves. And oftentimes, in order to get whatever fulfillment that means, they're going to bed later and later and waking up in time to go to their work. And so that truncates, right? So addressing the sleep issue itself, has a sound. Oftentimes, I wonder if this is the case for your clients, has to be unwinding deeper sort of lifestyle issues.
Yeah, I interestingly enough, my experience of coaching others on learning how to coach themselves around sleep,
yeah,
might be one of the most difficult challenges that I experience. For one piece, what you gave voice to, this is my time.
Yeah,
is one aspect of it. The other aspect that I've noticed is that if they're in a relationship, one partner wants to stay up, the other partner maybe wants to start going to sleep earlier, and that causes kind of this emotional turmoil around values in the relationship. The other one that I've noticed that comes up a lot is people notice that they're starting to get tired or sleepy, and then they look at the clock, and the clock says 8 p.m., and then they shame themselves for feeling sleepy at 8 p.m. What are you, a grandma or a grandpa or a kid? I would be a rich man if I got a nickel for every time I've been called a grandma or grandpa for my bedtime habits. Yeah. However, when you can start to kind of give some objectivity and practicalness around the importance of sleep with clients and how much of a global effect that has on every single system in the body, then we can start to get into, from that place, okay, what are the consequences of lack of sleep? From a positive perspective, I get to have time for myself, I get to watch what I want, etc. And from a negative perspective, maybe the health detriments that come along for that ride. And then what I do personally with a lot of my clients is my purpose with my clients isn't to change them. My purpose with my clients is to support them in understanding the positive and negative outcomes of any decision.
Yeah.
Then the decision is up to them. So let's say the decision's made of, Jator, I'm going to stay up late. Okay, cool. How about we get just get Flux on your computer? How about we get you blue blockers or something of the like that blocks out the blue light? We reduce the overhead lighting in your house and maybe move to a lighter lighting or lower lighting or Himalayan salt lamps or candles, etc. Whatever they feel comfortable with. And then my focus becomes other aspects of how I can support them if that's going to be their pleasure or their play or their joy. Because for me, at the end of the day, I want to support people where they're willing to be supported. And over time, interestingly enough, the paradox is they'll almost circle back to sleep at a certain point. Or as they start to do these other things in their lives, what they'll notice is a higher level of honoring what's true for them in their body, and they'll start to go to sleep. I have a client who I've been working with for 10 years, and literally in the last year, this person has now gotten to the point where they're starting to really respect sleep. And they've had enough time of feeling better to notice that when they're not sleeping or they're staying up late or they're going out with their friends, they're noticing the change in how they feel internally. They're also noticing, which is really powerful, the change in their emotional state, what they project outwardly onto the world, and their relationship with their children. And because they had this experience over and over and over again of lack of sleep and then seeing that show up, they're becoming their own coach, which is ultimately my goal.
Yeah.
Is to help people find and learn how to coach themselves.
Yeah. And hopping back to cognitive dietary restraint, we talked about mostly around calories, but I was sort of thinking back to the video we just did before this, and where you're talking about sort of meeting your clients where they are and finding what changes they're willing to make at the time, and kind of working with those. And somehow I imagine, is that kind of the best way to meet this issue of cognitive dietary restraint too, right? Because most diets, right, they're radical changes often to how the person has been eating, right? So if you try to, say, get them to eliminate what we call the four white devils right away, in entirety from a person's diet, right? Cutting out processed wheat or glutinous flours and grains, dairy, sugar, and table salt, people, you freak the heck out, right? I almost dropped the F-bomb there. People freak the heck out because that is such a radical divergence from your diet, and it's hard to find foods without those, right? Even if you're given nothing else to do except for cut those things out, that's not easy. And so I imagine that triggers the cognitive dietary restraint, kind of that reflex, that same sort of stress response.
I would wholeheartedly agree, and my experience has been something that I think is kind of at times missed in the coaching world. My perspective is this idea of patience. Is that there is no race. It's like, okay, when I look over someone's paperwork, let's say I see 70 things that might want to be addressed. Well, I definitely take into consideration my feeling with that person, what's in their paperwork, every experience I've had with them, maybe in a consult, and their voice, and what's behind their voice, and inflection and tone, and that gives me perspective in terms of, okay, what do I feel like this person may be able to handle? Can they handle 70 things? Some people can, and have clients who can just take that on. And there's other clients that, okay, well, you're eating standard American diet. Our first step, let's just say, is, hey, let's move your soda to kombucha, and let's get you a sugary kombucha that tastes really good, that you can really enjoy. And that's our first step in the direction that we're working. Because we really have to consider, or we really might want to consider, that the more stressed somebody is, or the more subtle stresses that are going on, that requires a tremendous amount of energy from the body. If they're low energy, change requires energy. So if I put a lot on their plate, that actually is going to cause them a lot more stress. And well, it usually causes self-sabotage mechanism of, well, I can't do that. So the paradox for me is less is more. To go slow and to move these things slowly with your clients to create habit patterns over time, because again, changing a habit takes energy. It's deeply facilitated in every body that we have: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, intuitive bodies. So it's to take that slowly and honor the lack of energy and create new habit patterns, which may say, okay, well, we're going to drink this sugary kombucha. GT Dave's great kombucha is the one I usually ask people to drink, because that tastes like Kool-Aid. So they enjoy it. Over the next 3 weeks or so, that becomes their new habit. So they're no longer thinking about the soda or the diet soda. Now they're drinking the grape kombucha. That's their new habit. Cool. Then I can give them another thing. And then that takes a little change.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, like, once these things become habitual, the person's consciousness no longer has to focus on it, which requires a lot less energy. It's habitual.
Right.
Then I can add a new thing, which doesn't seem overwhelming because these things here I don't notice anymore. I can add one little thing again and move it forward.
That's great. That idea, there is no race. That's maybe a good mantra to repeat. And it makes me think about, yeah, right.
I have a snail tattooed on my forearm to remind me.
That, this is an entirely another video. But I would love to talk to you sometime about this idea of pace and patience from a coaching perspective, especially for people who are starting their careers and who are, say, in a big box environment, right? Where it feels like there is a race because clients have specific goals and you have to hit those or you lose them, and it's that part of that environment. So how you balance doing what is the right thing with this need to get results?
I would love to shoot a video on that, and to sum that up, I think for me in a kind of a Zen way, which I have no idea what that means. I just say it.
I think that makes it particularly Zen.
Is that if we can learn to notice how much of our self-validation and self-acknowledgement comes from other people doing what we say, if we can reduce our need to get our needs met by clients becoming little cronies of us, that reduces our need to push an agenda. And the paradox of that is interestingly, for most people, in my experience, the more that we push our agenda, the more backlash there is against it. The more that we're open-handed and understanding and compassionate, the more change that occurs. Simply said, how many of us experienced that as a kid? How many of us experienced someone saying, hey, it's okay that you drink soda. That's cool. Let's explore why you drink soda. And here's some other options that we have. How do we support a person through their own process rather than pushing our process on them? And that, for me, is a masterful coach.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think we stuck to roughly our our new time goal. So, yay us.
That's me flapping my gums.
That's all right. Well, thanks, Jator. This was great. And maybe we'll save the coaching video for another time. I think we got a few more topics lined up for this fat loss series. Another C word, maybe. So thanks again, and go Aquaman.
And the movie It is awesome, by the way. I just want to keep plugging the cartoons.
I was going to say, our 2-second movie review here. I haven't seen it yet because I don't have somebody to go with me, and that movie, creepy movies scare me. Gory movies do not, creepy movies scare me, so I need to find somebody to go and hold my hand.
It's creepy. It's creepy.
Great. All right, thanks, Jator.